Four Non-Blondes seemed to come out of nowhere. On top of that, they didn't necessarily fit in with any of the popular music scenes at the time, and the media fixated on the fact that they were an all-girl group, at least early on in their career. Their sole 1992 record, Bigger, Better, Faster, and More, went platinum, selling over 1 million copies in America, and producing what was both one of the biggest hit songs and one of the most maligned songs in the 90s with What's Up. But years later, it would come out that despite the band's success, not all the members were happy with the group's music. Frontwoman Linda Perry would boast to the LA Times in 1993, "We thrive on being unpredictable. We get a kick out of breaking every rule we can." In today's video, we're going to explore whatever happened to the group Four Non-Blondes. Frontwoman and principal songwriter, the half-Brazilian, half-Portuguese Linda Perry, would be born in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Perry would spend her formative years on the West Coast in San Diego. Within the first 2 years of her life, she had failing kidneys and was told by doctors that she would not make a full recovery, but she ended up rebounding. Despite her health problems, she still had a rough childhood, telling the LA Times, "I was a confused kid, going in 20 different directions at once and going nowhere." She would describe her childhood as, and I quote, "unhappy," and Perry soon found shelter in drugs, something that soon took a backseat to music in her life. Perry would eventually find music thanks to her brother John, who was a well-versed guitarist. She wanted to learn guitar just like him. And as a kid, she used to lock herself in the bathroom with a guitar, a tape player, and sing. Her teenage years proved to be turbulent, and she even questioned her own sexuality and felt different from a lot of other girls she grew up around, and at one point almost took her own life, overdosing on her mother's pills from the bathroom. It was after this close call she brushed aside any reservations she had about who she was and decided to embrace life. That's not to say that the road ahead was easy. Her parents would soon divorce, resulting in her living with her mother and being thrown into poverty. It was during this time Perry opted to live on the street, where she got introduced to drugs, and she would admit to doing everything but heroin, but it would be another close call that resulted in her getting sober when she fell off a building and broke her collarbone. Perry would be fired from her first several bands she played in because, according to her bandmates didn't like her singing style. She would take a short break from music and move to San Francisco at the age of 21 in 1986. The move seemed to reignite her passion for music and give her more confidence. She would tell the LA Times, "Suddenly this big voice came out of me as if by magic. I was saner then, so I thought to myself, why not do something with this voice? At that time, I felt like I had lived 40 years. It was time to grow up and get a career," she'd say. Bassist Krista Hillhouse and guitarist Shauna Hall would be roommates in San Francisco and met drummer Wanda Day when they joined a band she was playing in. Eventually, the three musicians broke off and started their own three-person band. The three members came from different musical backgrounds and had already had some experience playing around San Francisco. Day played in a reggae and ska punk band before landing a lucrative gig as a top 40 cover band who played at a Holiday Inn. Hillhouse, meanwhile, played in at least 14 different bands by 1989, and it wasn't too long after this that Hall and Hillhouse came across Linda Perry at the club Nightbreak. Hillhouse would describe the fateful night that changed her career, revealing on her website, "One night Sean and I wandered into the Nightbreak and caught Linda playing a solo set. We were blown away by her raw power and emotion. She was singing a song called Down on Your Face, an over-the-top anthem born of rip-out-of-your-heart honesty, brutal and raw in its confession. Linda held a force over the crowd that was obvious, and I could only imagine how powerful it would be to blend strong instrumentation with such a stunning personality," she'd say. After witnessing Perry's performance, the pair asked her to join the band, and she agreed. This would be the beginning of Four Non-Blondes. The first incarnation of the band featured all women, and the band's music would blend together the styles of acoustic, folk, funk, and old-fashioned rock and roll. According to the Morning Call newspaper, the band's name came from an event that happened in San Francisco's North Beach area when Hillhouse was sitting on a park bench and a little blonde boy in a sailor costume walked by with his blonde mom and dad. Hillhouse would reveal to the paper that the boy saw a piece of pizza in a trash bin right next to where she was sitting, and there's another version of the story that all the band members were sitting on the park bench and not just Hillhouse. The mother told her son not to touch the pizza because it was dirty from the pigeons and the people, but the mom was staring right at Hillhouse, the non-blonde. Coincidentally enough, the group's first rehearsal was scheduled for October 17, 1989, the same day as a major earthquake that happened in San Francisco. The rehearsal was planned for 6 p.m. and the earthquake hit 45 minutes prior. Obviously, they canceled their first rehearsal, and the band's first gig would be a benefit show in early 1990. While the band had a lot of chemistry, Linda Perry was still used to doing her own thing, telling an interviewer. For the first couple of months, I had a hard time getting to practice because I was used to being solo. I could practice whenever I wanted, pick up my guitar, and go do whatever I wanted. I had to snap out of it and think, Linda, this is a band now. This is not your own time at your own convenience. You have to get it together. I'm not used to people relying on me. Yeah, it was hard in the beginning. While Shauna Hall was the early driving force of the band, that soon changed as frontwoman Linda Perry took a more prominent role in the songwriting and the spotlight. The band were soon playing sold-out gigs at local hotspot Nightbreak, and they soon landed themselves an opening spot for Bob Mould at the Warfield Theatre. 6 months after their formation, the band developed a good following around the city, and they soon developed a base in the Haight-Ashbury area of the city. They would buy clothes from a local thrift store named The Wasteland, and they had friends at the Haight-Ashbury music shop who helped them out with instruments. As their shows started generating some revenues, it also helped pay for studio time and allowed the group to record a demo, which they began selling at concerts. But it wasn't enough money to quit their day jobs. By late 1990 and early 1991, the momentum kept building around the band, and they were being featured prominently in the local press, including the San Francisco Chronicle. The band had their sights set on nabbing a major recording contract for 2 reasons: the distribution, and it gave them the opportunity to quit their day jobs. But they were also conflicted. The members were all gay, but some members are more comfortable being open about it than others. You also have to remember that this was the 90s, so it was a lot different than it is now. Also, the band was worried that signing to a major label would turn off some of their original fans and water down their music. In fact, Linda Perry would admit years later that some of their gay fan base were angered when the group started playing straight clubs and developing a straight following. According to Krista Hillhouse, Linda Perry and Shauna Hall tried to dress more feminine in an effort to get the attention of major recording labels, thinking that once they got a deal, they could go back to being themselves. It was this attitude that created tension between the band members. And by February of 1991, publications around the city hailed Four Non Blondes as the best unsigned act in the city. Hillhouse would tell Songfacts the reality of being pursued by labels, saying, "We did really well in San Francisco, we got a lot of press, and we were selling out all our shows. With the labels, once one of them looks at you, they all jump in line. A&R people are so brainless. If you're getting attention because people are coming to your shows, they'll check you out. But once one of them approaches you, they all approach you." Even by the end of the 80s, the record companies had switched to where they were looking for the band that just had one hit. And then who knows after that? They didn't really develop acts anymore. When we got signed, they knew What's Up sounded like a hit, she'd say. By May of 1991, Four Non Blondes finally found their home at Interscope, and the foreshadowing of the band's eventual demise happened pretty early on during negotiations with the label, with Hillhouse writing on her website. The A&R guy from Interscope Records and his assistant Leslie Gerard were at the show, and we were all to have lunch afterwards with our lawyer and our manager in tow. As we prepared to leave for the restaurant, Sean and I noticed Linda being whisked away in a limo. Linda was being singled out in this way that made us both take pause. The foreshadowing couldn't have been any more obvious if we were making a B movie. When we met up at the restaurant, I remember thinking divide and conquer. I think they would have signed Linda to her own contract right then and there had she been willing, she'd say. It wasn't too long after signing with Interscope that the group's drummer Wanda was fired. The band concluded that her playing wasn't suited to performing ballads, so she was let go and replaced with Don Richardson, who came as a recommendation from a friend of the band. The band's label suggested the group work with Prince and Peter Gabriel producer David Tickle, and recording the group's debut album exposed more fractures in the band. Guitarist Shauna Hall's playing wasn't up to par according to her bandmates, and she would be fired, and a session player would be brought in, their first male member, Luis Matoyer. Hall would give her recollection of events telling the San Francisco Chronicle in 1993. "I had a choice. I was asked to let a session guy come in. I probably could have stayed with the group, but I couldn't do that. I was a very young musician with little studio experience. Recording was a hardship for me, but I don't feel like I got any support from my friends. It came down to big money and ego trip. Linda had a dream and she wasn't going to let anything get in the way, even if it meant writing off your guitar player," she'd say. Mark Ryden would be chosen to do the cover art for the album, and he'd previously worked with Warrant. He provided a few concepts, including school children, before landing on the final cover art. The group's session guitarists opted not to tour with the band, and they once again had to search for a guitarist before they hit the road, and they would find somebody who worked actually at one of their manager's office, a player named Roger Rocha. Their debut record, Bigger, Better, Faster, More, would be released in October of 1992. The band hit the road the same year to support the album, and the first single that was released was a song called Dear Mr. President, which one Texas radio station refused to play because they deemed it as an attack on then-sitting President George Bush Sr. But the song had nothing to do with him, according to Krista Hillhouse, who told Songfacts. George Sr. was president at the time, and we were having a hard time getting airplay in certain places. It's kind of funny because it wasn't about the president in office, it was about the hierarchy of power in government. It wasn't specifically pointed at him. I remember being really surprised when it happened. It's a song about looking around and seeing problems and feeling like there's someone in charge who is responsible, she'd say. The band would first break out in Europe with their single What's Up, topping song charts across the continent and peaking at number 14 back home in the States. The song has even amassed over 1 billion views on YouTube. The group's label would tell the LA Times that their plan was to build a base on college radio and then release What's Up as a single stateside, but that plan fell by the wayside as the band's popularity grew quicker than the label expected. What's Up would be a song that was written before Four Non-Blondes formed. It was written by Perry when she was doing solo shows around the city, and another struggling musician was also in the same scene, Third Eye Blind Stephen Jenkins. Jenkins and Perry would play their songs for one another, with Perry playing Jenkins' What's Up and Jenkins playing her Semi-Charmed Life. But during the recording of the group's first album, the band wasn't happy with the version they recorded with producer David Tickle with new lyrics, and Interscope head Jimmy Iovine agreed. Perry would instead take over the producer's role for the song, and Perry would be upset that Tickle received a producing credit on the track, telling Tape Op magazine. The producer David Tickle had no sense of what the song was. I went to the label and said, "This song sucks, this is not the song I wrote." I grabbed the band during a break and we went to the record plant. I started moving things around. I was in the middle of vocals when David Tickle showed up. I was annoyed. We were already done with the frigging song. We comped the vocals and mixed it that night. That is the version that blew up all over the world. I've told the story enough that people know that David Tickle did not produce that song. It was me, she would say. By the spring of 1993, the band made their first major television appearance performing on the Arsenio Hall show, and by the summer of that year, the band opened for Neil Young and Pearl Jam, followed by an opening slot for Aerosmith across North America and Europe once again. It would turn out that Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv, had asked her dad to let Four Non-Blondes open for them. By early 1994, the band was still riding high off the success of their debut album, but another lineup change happened within the group. It was during this period that they fired guitarist Roger Rocha, who according to Hillhouse was overwhelmed at the responsibility of being in the band and whose live performances sometimes were not up to par. The same year, the band contributed to the soundtrack for the Adam Sandler film Airheads, where they would do a cover of the Van Halen track I'm the One. They would enlist guitarist Jim Mankey to play on the track and tour with them through Europe once again. By the end of 1994, the band was exhausted, but Hillhouse would admit, "We secured Dave Jordan as a producer. I felt like taking some time off. I was somewhat exhausted and missed having a social life, but our lives were on someone else's schedule at that point, so I buckled down and prepared myself for the next project. I had no real clue that it was the beginning of the end," she would say. By late 1994, the band rented a mansion in Los Angeles to begin work on their second album. Song ideas were flowing and the band was already working in the studio and even filmed some of the footage for a documentary. But during the recording of their sophomore record, frontwoman Linda Perry let it be known to her bandmates that she was done with the group. She wanted to become a solo artist and had reservations about the style of music the band was playing. She would tell The Advocate in 1995 after her departure, "We had the song What's Up that was very poppy and we felt we had to follow that style on our next album, but I didn't want to make that kind of record again. I wanted to play weird atmospheric music." She would reveal in the same interview that she burst into tears midway during the recording of the group's second album in front of their A&R man. Much to her surprise, Interscope wanted to sign Perry to a solo artist deal. The band would have some commitments in early 1995 that they fulfilled, but they eventually called it quits. Following the dissolution of the group, Krista Hillhouse would play in several bands while attending college, and drummer Don Richardson would continue to play with other groups as well, while also becoming a music teacher and penning several books on percussion. By the summer of 1995, Perry was working on her first solo album for Interscope, telling the LA Times why she left the band, saying, "I just found myself really unmotivated. Have you ever been in a situation where you're doing something very safe and everything's going right and there's really no reason to change it, but something inside of you is saying, I don't know, there's something not right about this, and it eats at you and it eats at you," she'd say. In the same interview, she revealed that despite her lack of enthusiasm for her former band, she was actually shocked that Four Non Blondes wasn't more commercially successful, saying, "I don't mean to sound like I'm going to sound right now, but I kind of thought we would have done better than we did. I was hoping that we would actually walk away with some respect and some credibility in the music industry, and what we got was 5 million records. To me, credibility and respect is worth more than 5 million records," she'd say. By August of 1996, Perry would release her debut solo album, In Flight, and it was a huge flop, selling only 11,000 copies in its first 4 months of release. In 1999, Linda Perry and Krista Hillhouse would reunite in support of Perry's second album, where she opened for Bryan Adams. By the new millennium, Perry soon turned her attention to producing and songwriting for other artists, including a who's who of the pop music industry, including Pink, Christina Aguilera, James Blunt, Enrique Iglesias, and Miley Cyrus. Perry would be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2015, and 1 year earlier in May of 2014, Four Non Blondes would reunite for a benefit show called An Evening for Women, celebrating arts, music, and equality in Los Angeles. It marked the first time the band had performed together in nearly 20 years. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. We'll see you again on Rock and Roll Your Stories. Take care.